For a generation, Eddie Murphy represented something almost mythical in Hollywood, a man whose presence alone could ignite laughter and whose voice seemed to carry joy into millions of homes. His films dominated theaters, his stand-up redefined comedy, and his charisma felt effortless. At the height of his fame, Eddie Murphy was not merely successful, he was essential to American entertainment. Yet behind the brilliance of that laughter lived a quieter, more complicated human story, one shaped not only by triumph, but by early loss, emotional endurance, and the hidden cost of living inside constant expectation. As Eddie Murphy enters his later years, his story no longer glows solely with box office numbers or iconic characters, but instead invites a deeper reflection on what fame gives, what it takes, and what remains when the noise fades. A childhood marked by absence. Eddie Murphy was born on April 3, 1961, in Brooklyn, New York, into a working-class family navigating the realities of limited means and limited certainty. His father, Charles Edward Murphy, worked as a New York City traffic officer and performed comedy at local venues, unknowingly planting the earliest seeds of his son's future path. When Eddie was just 8 years old, his father died as a result of violence, a loss that shattered the foundation of his childhood. The death left more than grief. It created an absence that words could not fully describe, an emotional gap that Eddie would later acknowledge as something he never truly filled. His memories of his father faded quickly, replaced by a vague sense of loss that lingered beneath the surface of his life. Separation and survival. Following her husband's death, Eddie's mother, Lillian, struggled deeply with her mental health and was hospitalized, leaving Eddie and his older brother Charlie without parental care for a time. During this period, Eddie spent a year in foster care, an experience he would later describe as one of the most difficult chapters of his childhood. Removed from familiarity and security, he learned early how to adapt, how to stay quiet when necessary, and how to cope when stability felt fragile. It was during this time that humor became more than entertainment for him. It became protection, a way to soften harsh realities and maintain a sense of control in a world that often felt unpredictable. Humor as a lifeline. In the absence of comfort, Eddie discovered imitation and performance almost instinctively. He mimicked voices, characters, and cartoons, not for applause, but for relief. Making his brother laugh became a form of reassurance, a small reminder that joy could exist even in uncomfortable spaces. Eddie later reflected that without humor, survival itself might have felt impossible. This instinct to transform pain into comedy did not vanish as his life improved. Instead, it hardened into a skill, then into a calling. Laughter was not a distraction from pain for Eddie Murphy. It was the method by which he endured it. A family reunited but forever changed. When Eddie's mother recovered and remarried, the family reunited and moved to Long Island, settling into a modest but stable life. Eddie was no longer separated from home, but the experiences of loss and displacement had already shaped him. Childhood wounds, once formed, do not simply disappear with improved circumstances. They become quiet companions, influencing personality, ambition, and emotional expression. Eddie carried those early memories forward, even as laughter increasingly defined his identity. The boy who had learned to perform to survive now found that same skill drawing attention wherever he went. The class clown with a private dream. At school, Eddie Murphy quickly became known as the student who could make anyone laugh. He imitated celebrities, teachers, and cartoon characters with uncanny accuracy, earning laughter even when academics did not come easily. While others saw a joker, Eddie saw a future. When asked what he wanted to do with his life, he did not hesitate. He envisioned fame not as fantasy, but as destination. Yet beneath that confidence lived a teenager shaped by uncertainty, using humor not only to entertain but to shield parts of himself he had never learned to express openly. First steps onto the stage. Eddie's first performances took place far from glamour, in community centers and small clubs where the lights were dim and the pay minimal. At 15, stepping onto a stage felt terrifying, but once he heard laughter, clarity replaced fear. This was where he belonged. He began performing regularly, often traveling across New York by subway, balancing school obligations with late-night shows. Teachers worried, friends doubted, but Eddie pressed forward with single-minded determination. Each performance refined his timing, sharpened his instincts, and reinforced his belief that comedy was not simply talent, but purpose. Persistence without privilege. In an industry that offered few shortcuts, Eddie relied on persistence. He faced rejection repeatedly, often performing for skeptical audiences or being dismissed due to his age and background. Yet every failure strengthened his resolve. Comedy clubs became classrooms, and criticism became fuel. Eddie understood that opportunity would not be handed to him. It would have to be earned through endurance. His humor grew bolder, his characters more defined, and his stage presence more commanding. Slowly, people began to notice. The SNL breakthrough. When Eddie Murphy auditioned for Saturday Night Live, he was still a teenager competing in a space dominated by established performers. Initially hired in a limited role, he used every moment on screen to leave an impression. His characters resonated instantly, combining sharp social commentary with fearless physical comedy. At a time when the show faced uncertainty, Eddie's performances revived audience enthusiasm. Within a short period, he became the emotional center of the program, earning recognition as one of the most influential cast members in its history. Fame arrived quickly, and with it came pressures few young adults are prepared to manage. Hollywood's New Star Film Studios moved swiftly to bring Eddie Murphy to the big screen. His early movies confirmed what television audiences already knew. He possessed a rare ability to command attention. Success followed success, and box office numbers soared. Eddie was suddenly one of the most recognizable faces in entertainment, carrying films almost entirely on charisma alone. The industry celebrated him, but celebration came with expectation. Each role needed to be bigger, funnier, and more profitable than the last. The laughter never stopped, but the room to breathe quietly disappeared. Fame is responsibility. As Eddie's career exploded, so did the pressure to maintain momentum. Fame, while rewarding, demanded consistency. The public wanted the same joy repeatedly, and Hollywood expected endless output. Eddie later reflected that he missed out on a typical young adulthood, trading normal experiences for constant scrutiny. Success, while validating, became a responsibility rather than a gift. He was admired widely, yet increasingly isolated, carrying the emotional weight of a career that never slowed down. Love, family, and public image. In the early 1990s, Eddie married Nicole Mitchell, and together they built a family that appeared stable and loving from the outside. Over 13 years, they welcomed 5 children, and Eddie often spoke publicly about fatherhood as his greatest source of pride. The image of a devoted family man softened his larger-than-life persona. Yet private life rarely aligns perfectly with public narrative. When the marriage ended, the separation marked not just personal heartbreak, but the collapse of an identity he valued deeply. Relationships under a microscope. Following his divorce, Eddie's personal life became increasingly visible. and moments that might have remained private for others unfolded under intense public attention. Misunderstandings, legal matters, and emotional strain played out in headlines, often without nuance or empathy. For Eddie, these experiences reinforced how unforgiving fame could be. Personal growth became difficult when every misstep was magnified. The joy he found in fatherhood remained, but romantic stability proved elusive, leaving emotional spaces that no professional success could fully replace. Loss within the family. In 2017, Eddie faced another profound loss with the death of his brother, Charlie Murphy. Beyond being siblings, the two shared a creative bond and deep mutual understanding. Charlie's passing left Eddie visibly shaken, reminding him that even those who walk alongside us longest are not guaranteed permanence. Naming his son in honor of his brother reflected a quiet tribute, one rooted in love rather than words. Grief once again entered his life not as spectacle, but as silence. Career setbacks and reflection. As the film industry evolved, Eddie encountered periods of professional uncertainty. Some projects failed to connect with audiences, and critical responses grew harsher. Rather than chasing constant visibility, Eddie gradually chose distance. Retreating from the spotlight was not surrender, but self-preservation. He recognized that constant exposure had taken an emotional toll, and stepping back offered space to reassess what mattered most. Choosing privacy over noise. Eddie Murphy's absence from the screen led to speculation, but those close to him understood the decision differently. He sought balance, choosing projects selectively and prioritizing family life. Fame, once overwhelming, no longer defined his sense of worth. Instead, he focused on being present as a father and rediscovering joy away from constant judgment. Silence, once feared, became restorative, a quiet return. When Eddie returned with projects that reflected maturity and intention, audiences responded warmly. His work carried depth shaped by lived experience rather than youthful urgency. Appearances felt deliberate, not obligatory. Recognition followed, but Eddie approached it with grounded humility. The desire to dominate had faded, replaced by appreciation for craft and connection. Fatherhood as anchor today, Eddie Murphy often speaks of his children as his greatest achievement. With a large family spanning decades, his life reflects both continuity and change. He attends school events, celebrates milestones, and embraces everyday routines that fame once interrupted. These moments, ordinary by design, provide fulfillment no award ever could. The paradox of legacy. Eddie Murphy's legacy is undeniable. His influence on comedy and film continues to shape new generations. Yet legacy does not erase loneliness, nor does success prevent introspection. At this stage of life, Eddie stands as a reminder that greatness and vulnerability coexist. Laughter can be powerful, but it does not cancel pain. The man beyond the applause. When the spotlight dims, Eddie Murphy remains what he has always been beneath it all. A man shaped by loss, resilience, creativity, and love. His journey is not a tragedy, but a testament to complexity. Fame did not save him, nor did it destroy him. It simply revealed him, layer by layer. A life still unfolding. At 64, Eddie Murphy's story is not defined by regret alone, nor by nostalgia. It is defined by choice, growth, and the courage to live beyond expectation. His laughter once filled theaters. Now it fills his home. And in that quiet shift lies perhaps the most meaningful success of all.